Nation, Trey Strelko here. Welcome into the Sons of UCF Live. Happy homecoming, everyone, to you, Adam, and to the reigning Cow of the Week. Hello, Mike.
How's it going, guys?
Just Ducky.
Duck you.
That was Ducky. Ducky. Gotcha.
Ducky.
Trace, I thought you were going to ask me to tell you my name and the position I played. I was prepared for you today.
You're making fun of the media day for men's and women's basketball. Well, a lot of guys, we got to get to know all of those interviews on the Sons of UCF YouTube channel. Mike, are you heading up? I left off on the podcast this week that you were.
No, there was no about it. I'm not coming. I told you guys I'm not coming. I'm Cow of the Week for it. I'm just not making the trip. I'm staying home, saving a few bucks.
Wow, you're in that J.P. Gilbert playbook, aren't you? Jeez. You'll be embracing the agenda in no time. Adam, you're going to come up, though?
I will be present and accounted for. Can't wait.
Full family?
Full squad.
Is that bubble machine going to be out there for the kids?
I did see that. It is on the timeline. I expect to see you there again, Trace.
We had one of those for one of my daughter's birthday parties. You better hose them down. How are they going to go into the stadium? They're going to be covered in bubbles after that?
Might cool them down a little bit. All right, right before we go on, this I want to start programming this Suns Plus behind the paywall because that's when the salty language comes. Mike, let's start with you. What's your final thought on UCF losing 34-13?
I thought I'd be at the acceptance level by today. I'm still stuck on angry. I'm still very angry about last week's game. It's going to take a win this week for me to get over that. And now this week's game is a must win because of that game. If we win that game, this week's game would just be a driver's seat game, fighting for home field in the championship game. Now this is must win. We have to win this game. We have to win the game against Tulane later down the road.
Adam, any positive? There's no positive, right? Except Colton Boomer kicking game against ECU. Everything else that could go wrong really did.
Yeah, the only positive is probably Colton Boomer. I like Mike. I don't know if I'm angry. I'm frustrated because I think we know that this team can play better than we saw. And a lot of it was self-inflicted. An early drop, just a rash of turnovers, not being able to get off the field on third down on defense. It's frustrating because we see the ceiling for this team, and then to go out there and feel like you're not focused, you're not ready to play. That's probably the most frustrating part about it. So hopefully this is a good wake-up call. And I think we said that after Louisville too, though, for Gus to, kick somebody in the ass and say it's time for us to go out there and start playing better. But it was frustrating to see us look unprepared, us look just disinterested early on. And then at that point, it was just too late. We couldn't catch up. So hopefully this is a wake-up call moment for the team.
Yeah, the two things, you talked about it out of Monday's press conference availability with Coach Malzahn. Talked about the energy level not being there, and he talked about ECU playing with more tempo, and both of those were, I thought, troubling lines from him. Why were they not better prepared for the game?
That feels like coach speak. I think we're all smart enough to know that he's sending some sort of a message to his team on that one, right? He's falling on the sword saying, I got to get him better. I got to get him prepared better. I got to get better energy. That's coach speak. I think that's meant to get back to them. There's probably a hidden meaning behind that. So I think that's the part that we won't know about. But it is, if that's true, it is definitely was troubling to hear a coach admit, hey, I didn't have my guys ready. You don't hear that a lot. I know a lot of people love to hear the honesty, but there's also some point of negligence, and that borders on negligence from a football coaching standpoint.
You only get 12 of these a year. You get 8 in the conference. Every one of them is a big game. You can't tell me one of these conference games you didn't get up for it. That's a bad excuse.
So sold out bounce house, Cincinnati coming in. They got the one loss at Arkansas in week 1. They're perfect in conference play. All that talk that they'd lost all these guys to the NFL, there was going to be a significant drop off. That's still a top 20 team. I asked on my poll question this week, Knights 5-2. Where do you expect them to finish with 5 games left in the season? 7, 8, 9, 10. Mike, how do you vote?
I predict us to win every game before the season starts.
Every year. Yes.
And I feel that way when I look at the schedule. I don't see a team on the schedule that is better than us when the season starts. But now as the season's gone on and it's 2 years in a row now, we have these losses that are unexplainable losses. Sometime last year, Navy. This year, we thought we were the better team against Louisville and East Carolina, and we've already lost 2. I can't confidently say we're going to win the rest of our games and win 10. Right now, it's going to be looking like 8 or 9 wins.
Yeah, at this point, I can't confidently say we can go and win on the road, right? We just haven't seen a Gus Malzahn team outside of Temple win a road conference game, right? Like I need to understand if we can go win at Memphis. Can we actually do? Can we go win at Tulane? God forbid we lose to the Cows. Like I need to see if we can win on the road in conference because that has not been a strength of Gus from that standpoint. So I'm probably with Mike. Give me that 8-9 category, probably closer to 8 at this point because that road issue seems to really be an issue.
And then if 8 wins is that progress, right? Finished 8-4 last year. They get the bowl win in Gasparilla Bowl over Florida, and you come back with 8 wins. And I don't know what we get with this team. You're talking about the road. They've been pretty dominant at home. What is it, 30-3 with a loss to Louisville this year, Cincinnati, Tulsa in the 2020 COVID year. But Cincinnati, they lead this all-time series 4-3, 3 straight wins. Big game. They're both going into the Big 12. This is not only a potential knockout game for UCF in terms of a conference championship, but also sending a message going into the Big 12.
Yeah, this feels like a rubber meets the road game, right? This is our opportunity to sort of put our foot, firmly on the ground and say that we are here and that we belong. Mike and I talked about this on the podcast. There are players on this team that have never beaten Cincinnati, right? There are guys who are in their senior season that could leave after this year without a win against Cincinnati, and that's something that as a program we've got to continue to find ways to beat these teams. I know we got close a few of those years, but we cannot continue to let that happen. And I think a lot of it goes back to the home crowd. Trace Brandon's with us in the chat. He's got a little video here. Hold on, let me see if I can pull this up and play this for you guys. This is what we need. Just a bunch of yelling at this point, but you all remember that crowd and how much that hyped up the team in that 2018 game. We need to see one of those crowds, and we need to see one of those performances, I think, for us to really kind of put our foot down in this game. But we can't drop 4 in a row to Cincinnati. That can't happen. This is rubber meets road.
As much as we pat ourselves on the back for our performance as the crowd that night, remember, Cincinnati still converted a first down. They drove all the way down the field, punted, and then scored first on us. We were down 7-0, but the difference was that our team in 2018 was a championship team. They got over that. Is this team able to do that? Can they handle adversity? We're going to find out this week.
Head coach Gus Malzahn with high praise of Cincinnati and head coach Luke Fickell, and he talked about them earlier this week.
It's hard to win on the road in college football, much less this league. So, they have a winning culture. It's impressive to watch, and it's a good challenge. It's one of the best teams in college football, but we're playing at home, and I know our players are looking forward to a game like this, and so it's 2 conference rivals, and ought to be a good one.
Ought to be a good one. Should be a top 25 matchup, if not for ECU. Should be game day hosting by UCF, but that didn't happen, of course. This comes just a couple of days after new Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark visited the campus and spoke with the media on Wednesday. One in the room with the first question, as always, is Brandon Helwig. Let's bring him on now, publisher at UCF's rival site. Been covering the Knights since the late 1990s. A veteran now of these live streams as he does them in the dungeon. Brandon, welcome into Sons of UCF Live.
Great to be here. I think it's the first time I've been on Sun since I decided to put some stuff on my wall. It was pretty empty before, so glad to be here again.
All right, so Brett Yormark, a big difference from Mike Oresco. He carries himself with a different level of confidence. His business background and other experiences, that's what he brings to the Big 12.
Yeah, and this was interesting because he's been going on all these campus tours, and I feel like UCF was the last one I think that he had not yet to visit. It was supposed to be a few weeks back. It was postponed, and it was good. It's kind of a dog and pony show a little bit. All these schools, they have them, come in. They have all their, social teams, video teams. They have cheerleaders as he walks in the lobby of these places. That's kind of how they've all done it. So it was interesting. I kind of got the sense, and I don't know if Trace, you might agree with me. I don't think he really knows much yet about UCF. I sort of thought, we had a little press conference with them. I don't know, it was about 20 minutes or so. Whether he knows a lot or not, I thought he would have had a few more talking points ready to go because he was going to be asked about, specifically about what he learned about UCF and kind of, I thought he was going to say a little bit more than he did. I did watch his press that he did, I think, after Cincinnati. I think I watched BYU, BYU TV. He did something on there. I know I've watched other interview sessions he's done. So he didn't say a whole lot about UCF. he said he was, impressed, and obviously he's excited about expanding the footprint, getting into the state of Florida with the Big 12. But it was fine, just he definitely has a lot more charisma and bravado than I think any other conference commissioner right now.
All right, Brandon, let's get the ECU questions out of the way. I got one for you, and then we'll move on to our regular scheduled programming. A lot of talk on the offense, a lot of talk about the turnovers, right? Obviously, we know what happened there. For me, though, the defense was really surprising in that they were not able to get off the field, had some consistent issues getting third down stops. Corners were left on islands and gave up big plays. We've seen this defense be stout. They've carried us probably for the last, 10, 15 games if you go back to last season. Do you think what we saw against ECU is a concern of yours, or is that just an aberration, just an off night for a unit in a kind of random road game?
Yeah, I wish I could really answer that, because it's just one of those things where, how we saw the early part of the season go. You play a team that's lower level in UCF, a team like an FAU. Obviously everyone looks good. The defense, the thing is, the defense had been consistent pretty much every game. At least red zone wise, they'd allow their yards. They'd always allow the first drive or so to march down the field. But other than that, the defense had been solid. So I think I'm less worried about the defense. I think as far as ECU, I think Holden Ahlers had the game of his life. I mean, he was due for that. I mean, that was the game of his career. He's been there 5 years. I don't really know of any bigger win than he had, beating UCF. So he was due for that. That was his second to last home game at ECU. Happy for him, whatever. I'm not that worried about UCF's defense. It's just the offense right now. It's just been so inconsistent, up and down. I think, second half against SMU, that full game against Temple, I think, everyone's getting real confident. They finally figured it out. O-line's looking good. John Rice put it together. He's reading the field. He's reading the defenses. He's distributing the ball where it needs to go. They want to take away the run, fine. John Rice can throw it. And now we're sort of back, I feel like, where we were, after Georgia Tech, where we're like, can 49 yards win a football game? I don't think it's going to be that bad, but I don't know. I'm just very interested to see how this game goes. As you guys said, it's obviously a must win. And, I'm getting jacked up for it just because, last night I was thinking about that 2018 game, and I'm like, yeah, I remember how loud it was. I think I had video of that. So I'm pulling that up, and I'm like, I'm getting excited because, that's really the last time really UCF truly hosted Cincinnati, because 2020, that doesn't really count. And I'm just getting jacked up. I think Cincinnati, I'm not taking anything away from them. Obviously, they still have a very excellent team, coming back. They lost a lot of guys to the NFL, whatever. But they've skated, and they've won the games other than the season opener against Arkansas. They've won them. But, I mean, this is a team that beat, South Florida by 4 points. They beat SMU over the weekend by 2 points. They beat Tulsa by 10 points. I mean, they're not knocking the doors off anybody. So I think it's kind of the perfect storm. I think UCF's gonna rebound, but I don't know. We'll see what happens on Saturday.
You're as connected to this program as anybody, Brandon. Coming off that tough loss the other day, is there any finger pointing going on? Anybody blaming each other? How's the locker room right now?
Well, I'm not in that locker room, so I'm not exactly sure about that. I think the fact that this offense has put it together, in the two previous games, that there would be less of that happening. I sort of felt like maybe that would have been more of an issue early in the season when, receivers weren't getting the ball, and they kind of maybe wondered, are we ever going to get the ball with this quarterback? Yeah, Kobe Hudson disappeared for a couple of games, nagging stuff or whatever they called it, and Javon Baker, hopefully he comes back healthy. But yeah, I wouldn't think so. I think it's just one of those things where everyone just trap game. I think Trace kept on bringing up the other week, trap game. I guess it was, and I just think everyone now, they know it's Cincinnati. I'm kind of glad that it's Cincinnati and not, Tulsa or just a random team, in the AAC this week. I think the fact that it's Cincinnati and it's at home is gonna, that got everyone to forget last week pretty quickly, because they know what they got to do, and they know how much the narrative can change if they can beat Cincinnati.
But we heard again from Coach Malzahn during his Monday media availability that John Rice Plumlee, he hasn't played quarterback much. He's still learning. And it seems like through 7 games now that line is getting to be a bit old, right? And we still don't know what we're going to see. You mentioned these opponents. SMU I give credit to, but the others were really inferior in comparison to what the Knights have in terms of talent. This is a big game now for the Knights, and none of us really know which John Rice Plumlee we're going to see.
And this is a good defense. This is the best defense UCF's probably going to play to this point. So, like I said, you asked me a minute ago, what are we going to see? Like, I don't know. I mean, I would hope they figure things out. But when you play defenses with the pulse, that's when this quarterback and this offense seems to kind of fold a little bit. And I just hope they got it out of their system. The energy that wasn't being matched, or whatever you want to call it. I tend to agree with Adam. I think that was more coach speak more than anything else. I mean, I don't know if you really recognize that in real time. I just think it's something you say in a press conference a few days later when you're trying to, take the heat for the loss. But I'm not totally sold on this Cincinnati team. I know they're still one of the best. They're going to be they're a top 2 or 3 team in this league. I still think the top 3 teams are UCF, Tulane, and Cincinnati. But it just kind of depends on this offense getting themselves together and figure things out and finding a way to beat teams that have a pulse, because that hasn't happened this year.
All right, Brandon, nobody closer to the program than you over the years. Do you consider Cincinnati to be a rival? Is this a rivalry between Cincinnati and UCF?
Yes and no. I mean, yes, in the fact that, I feel like everyone would agree that UCF and Cincinnati have kind of been the class of the AAC, at least, going back to 2017. Obviously, it was UCF first. And I kind of feel ever since that night in Cincinnati in 2019, forgot how many turnovers there were, how many interceptions Dylan Gabriel threw. But, ever since that game, it's just, it's all about it's all been about Cincinnati, that UCF hasn't been able to get back and at that point to kind of be thought of as a, the prime contender in the league. So, the fact that, there's a little bit of a rivalry. I know Luke Fickell was asked this question in his press conference, and he said yes, because, he remembers in his first season when he took over in 2017, I know UCF scored a touchdown on every possession. They didn't punt the ball. Was it 56-21 or something like that? 56-21. There was this big storm front coming into Cincinnati. For some reason, the game was starting at 8:00, and they wouldn't move it up an hour or two because he knew this storm was coming. And so the storm came, I guess, after the third quarter had ended, and it was going to rain for hours on end. So because the game had such a big lead, they called it. So the fourth quarter was not played. And for someone extremely competitive like Luke Fickell, he's never going to forget that. So I know to him it's a rivalry. I think it is, but it's not. It's never gonna be like a regional rivalry. I mean, maybe it'll get there. I don't know. You talk about teams that Florida, Tennessee aren't necessarily that close to each other, but that's a big rivalry in the SEC. I mean, yeah, it's sort of a rivalry, but I mean, how many Cincinnati? I mean, other than like Twitter people, I mean, do you know any Cincinnati fans like in real life? Like, I don't. I mean, I don't know. But
don't you root for the Bengals? You root for the Bengals.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Cincinnati pro sports fan. Just kind of grew up that way, but I don't really know any like UC Bearcat fans in Florida. I don't know. But the fact most schools are going to the Big 12, it's going to be a league where you're not going to have natural rivalries. I don't know if Cincinnati and West Virginia, just because they're a little bit closer together, might have a chance to develop something. But I think the fact that these two schools, I'm sure, will probably play every year from this point forward. Yeah, I think it can become more of one. It's a minor rivalry, maybe is what I'm trying to say.
After every game, we look at the box scores and we kind of say, hey, Johnny Richardson only got 2 touches this game, or O'Keefe only got the ball this many times. Are there too many mouths to feed on this offense? I know Plumlee's got to get more consistent, but how many guys can we make happy on this team?
Yeah, and that was, I don't know if concern's the right word, but I mean, that's just something that I was thinking about, even before the season started. There's so many guys who want to get the ball, and are they going to be happy on a game-to-game basis? And if they're not happy, maybe they'll hit the portal after this season. We'll see. I feel like in the case of Johnny, it seems like RJ Harvey is kind of taking those reps, those carries, as the season has gone on, after RJ didn't really play at the beginning of the year. It seems like Isaiah Bowser is going to play regardless. He's obviously going to see most of the action. He's going to start. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. I'm not sure how Ryan O'Keefe disappeared. I know he had a drop or so against ECU, but, it's been tough. Other than that Temple game and maybe the, last part of the SMU game, there hasn't been, FAU a little bit, but, an offensive performance where you felt everyone made plays, everyone got to touch the ball. We really, hopefully we see it on Saturday.
Not that Coach Malzahn seems inclined to make any sort of change at quarterback, but should there be a reason? Where do you stand on this? Who comes in, injury or, needs to be spelled, loses his helmet for a play? Who's the guy that comes in?
That's an interesting thing. I mean, they've already used the 4 games for Thomas, and I think everyone would agree that if anyone is the future at UCF quarterback, it's going to be Thomas Castellanos. That being said, I think they were strategically holding Mikey Keene for the meat or the latter part of the conference schedule. And I think they wanted, I mean, Gus Gus was actually more candid on this than I thought he was going to be. I think he was asked this, was it last week? He was asked something about it. And, I think he made a comment about trying to do right, he was alluding to playing in the 4 games and being able to retain your red shirt. So, yeah, I think it would be Mikey. I think if there was an injury or something like that, I think it would be Mikey. I think they're going to try hard not to burn Thomas's red shirt, but I don't think they want to play Mikey more than 4 games either. Was it like there's, I guess there's 5 games, could be a conference championship bowl game. There's a few more games than that, but I'm pretty sure it would be Mikey. But I know the question was asked and people were like, oh, why didn't they put in Mikey, against ECU? But I mean, that game was still close at halftime. It was a 17-10 game early in the second half, and I don't think it really would have been any different if by the time the game was decided, they just would have wasted the game putting in Mikey. I mean, so I agreed with the the strategy of rolling with JRP and seeing what happens. But yeah, I do think, to answer your question, that it would be Mikey going forward.
All right, Brandon, the UCF AAC farewell tour began, obviously, with ECU. Road games Tulane, road games Memphis, and obviously against the Cows. You've been covering this team for a long time. I assume you've been to all these stadiums, all these cities. Which one ACC city or AAC city we're leaving behind that you're going to miss the most?
That's a great question. I would probably say Memphis. Definitely Memphis. That's actually sort of, that's on a similar scale that I would say in terms of, yes, about a rivalry with Cincinnati. I would say there's a little bit of one there as well with Memphis. Just, there's conference championship games, there's back-to-back years, and it's the fact that they were pretty good, when UCF was in their run there in 17 and 18. But yeah, it's always a fun place. I mean, I got some personal connections. I got some family in that area that I always visit. The Liberty Bowl, there's some good memories there from, 2010 Liberty Bowl, just beating Georgia in that stadium, and obviously a lot of, memorable games against Memphis. I think I remember that 2013 game when, Stanback about knocked out the kick returner and is forced to fumble, and I think Dreko Johnson picked it up and scored, and then I think Terrence Plummer had a couple interceptions in the end zone. There's been some crazy games, and the Let's Go Bone, that game in 2018, right? And all of a sudden it was like 4th and 1 or whatever it was, and they give the ball to Tosh McGowan. Like, no one would have ever expected them to go for it, and he took it all the way for a touchdown. So there's been some fun games. That'll probably be the one that I miss the most. I'll tell you the one that I will not miss at all, and that's Tulsa. I will not miss Tulsa one bit. I was ecstatic when the schedules came out, and I realized UCF wasn't going to play Tulsa these final 2 years. So I am happy about that.
All right, the Malzahn era, the first 2 years, already a bunch of tough losses. Last year, obviously, Louisville, Navy was a really bad one. A couple blowouts, SMU and Cincinnati. This year, again, a couple tough ones. When you factor in the fact that we lost College Game Day last week by losing to East Carolina, is that the worst loss so far in the 2 years?
I mean, if you say if Game Day was on the line, yeah. I mean, I guess so. I mean, you lost to Navy last year. That was. But I mean, come on, there's so many injuries, and you didn't know what to expect at quarterback, and they were still doing their shenanigans by putting in Joey Gatewood towards the end of the game. I still feel like maybe that hampered their chances to win that one. But yeah, I would say with what was on the line and what was expected, because I feel like the expectations after Dylan got hurt and the injuries, the expectations were just nothing. We're just see what we could do to kind of salvage and get bowl eligible. I felt like those were the expectations last year with the true freshman quarterback. This year, the expectations are to win the conference, and losing the game at ECU. I know they're, a little bit better than some of these other teams. But I think that, I'd say so. Yeah. That's the most disappointing loss so far.
Let's wrap up with this. Before long, early signing day will be here. What's the skinny on recruiting? What's your sense of things going into that?
Oh, my sense of recruiting is that we have no idea what's going to happen. And by that, I mean, it's going to be really crazy here once the season ends to that early signing period, just with recruiting and transfer portal, because they're going to have that transfer portal window. And UCF doesn't have a ton of commitments, but it's like 11, 12 right now. And, they're saving spots for the portal, and we're going to find out who from this team is going to go in the portal. We're going to find out, players that maybe UCF maybe recruited a year ago and went other places. Are they going to be in the portal? We're going to find that some schools decide, well, we feel like maybe we want to get some high school guys, and, this whole NIL stuff now with collectives and offering deals and offering money to players to commit to them. I mean, that's basically what it is. We're going to see what happens. I know John Walker, who's committed to UCF. I mean, right now, he's committed to UCF, but he's going to be he's still in high demand. Schools they don't stop recruiting because he commits someplace. So he's going to get, NIL offers at some of these, places like Florida. They haven't ceased recruiting him. So it's going to be interesting. I really don't think it's going to be crazy. I'm going to say it that way. It's going to be a really crazy early part of December once we decipher and figure out all what's going on.
We have a lot of overlapping audience here between folks in the dungeon, folks that watch Sons of UCF. Now's a good time to jump into the dungeon. A little plug here for UCFsports.com. How can folks find you?
Yeah, well, yeah, you mentioned it, UCFsports.com. That's been my site for about 20 plus years now. UCF Sports is the Twitter handle as well, and I kind of feel like we talk about the dungeon. That's the name of our message board. That's kind of our UCF centric message board, social media, so to speak. So we have a lot of fun on there. Have a lot of longtime members. Always enjoy those game threads when everyone's having meltdowns and stuff. We got
UCF fans meltdowns. Stop.
Well, they do it everywhere. But yeah, it's that's a fun thing. We got a coverage realignment thread that's I think 300 plus pages going. So it's a good time there.
All right, let me hit you with one more hard-hitting question: Skyline chili or Carolina barbecue? You're the food critic for UCF, so if you got to choose one.
You know what? I haven't had Skyline chili since I was a kid. I entertained getting some on my last trip to Cincinnati, but just couldn't stomach it the way it looks. I had Carolina barbecue. I had Sam Jones barbecue, which I guess is one of the better places. It was okay. It was all right. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I had Parker's one time at ECU. It was terrible. I wanted to spit it out. Sam Ellis was fine. So
other than that, you loved it. You loved the hush puppies there.
Yeah, they look like something else. I will go with Eastern North Carolina barbecue over that whatever the heck they put on noodles. That cheese, that doesn't look good.
What's your go-to in Memphis? Where must fans go when they go up to that game in a couple weeks?
I mean, people there's the two that people know about. There's Rendezvous and there's a Corky's. My favorite, I would say, is the Germantown Commissary. It's a little bit of a drive if you're downtown. It's in Germantown, which is past East Memphis, but the Germantown Commissary is probably my favorite barbecue spot in Memphis.
There you go. You heard it from the man himself. Brandon Hellwig, publisher at UCFsports.com, the Rivals site. Brandon, see you out at the stadium Saturday.
I will see you guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Brandon. No one knows more about UCF Sports than Mr. Hellwig.
Well, I got to tell you, Aaron, our next guest, is in the chat. He was vehemently booing Brandon's chili takes. I was going to bring him in, but I didn't want to ambush Brandon like that. So Aaron was not a fan of Brandon's chili takes. So just take notice, Hellwig.
Mike, where are you at on some of these topics? If you had Skyline chili, if you had Carolina.
I've never had Skyline chili. There used to be one close by here. It's shut down now. I don't even think there is one in my area, and I've never had it. So I couldn't tell you.
All right, you mentioned our next guest. We're going to get to know a little bit more about the Bearcats. Let's welcome in Aaron Smith, covers Cincinnati for Bearcat Journal. Aaron, welcome back to Sons of UCF Live.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
So, what's your quick take? You think we're dissing that Skyline chili?
People don't appreciate it unless they're from here. It's actually a Greek dish, if believe it or not. It was based in Greece. No pun intended there. But it's I don't know, it's phenomenal.
And what's on it? It's got the spaghetti noodles. It's got
spaghetti noodles. I don't know if you can call it chili. Honestly, it's like a meat sauce. and then you can get your either cheddar cheese or habanero cheese. Depends on what kind of mood you're in. But
now in that sauce, there's some cinnamon to that.
There's a hint of cinnamon. I believe there might even be chocolate.
Oh my goodness, chocolate.
I don't know.
I've had this before, but I didn't know about the chocolate.
Yeah, I don't know. The recipe obviously is pretty secret. But
Stuff probably looks better on the way out.
Listen, I mean, I'm not ever worried about how I was looking on the way out. If I ate like that, I wouldn't eat anything.
Aaron, let's talk about Cincinnati. I think most fans that follow college football, watch the AAC, certainly thought, okay, they lost a lot of guys to the NFL. There's going to be a pretty significant drop off. Hey, look, Cincinnati, top 20 team. What was your thought about that going into the season? What drop off did you expect, if any?
There was absolutely going to be a drop off. You lose Desmond Ritter, you lose 8 more guys to the NFL, and I think there were even 2 or 3 more that ended up on practice camps during the summer. It's certainly going to be a drop off. That said, Coach Luke Fickell and his staff have continued to build. 3 of the last 4 classes have been the best class that the school has ever recruited. And when you continue to stack classes like that, it's really hard to have a tremendous drop off. So also you have Coach Luke Fickell and his staff at the helm. So that said, I mean, you kind of set yourself up, if you're going to have this type of a drop off, to at least be able to reload more so than rebuild.
Aaron, give us a scouting report on quarterback Ben Bryant. Obviously, big shoes to fill with Desmond Ritter. How has he played so far? When has he had his best, and where has he struggled this year?
Ben is maybe the one guy that I have seen in the quarterback room, as this is his second stint in the Cincinnati quarterback room after taking a brief hiatus at Eastern Michigan. He's got, as far as Des Bryant goes, he's got that same kind of swag in that his highs are not super high, his lows are not super low. And I think that's probably the best thing that I've heard coaches say about him. He is not going to be a giant threat, much like your own quarterback with his legs. But he's also not afraid to run the ball. I also don't know if he knows how to slide. That said, he does like to sling the rock, and these receivers definitely appreciate him for that.
Coming into this game, what are you most worried about as a Cincinnati fan? Is it maybe just playing in this atmosphere that's going to be there? Is it a player on our team, or is there some weaknesses on your team that you're scared of that we take advantage of?
Well, we know that the Bounce House is known as quite an environment, but Cincinnati has won there before. Although homecoming, well played. People have asked why they would schedule homecoming against Cincinnati, knowing that it was going to be a tough game for both teams. And I think it allows you to offer your best haymaker. The emotions are going to be running high. You don't want to lose homecoming in front of your home fans. It's an extra reason for people to be in the stands. And despite losing to East Carolina, I don't think there's going to be any give up in the fans for this team. That said, John Rice Plumlee is a dual threat, and Cincinnati has struggled with dual threat quarterbacks this season. As you've seen from both Tulsa and who else was it? It was South Florida, actually, not Tulsa. South Florida and Arkansas to open the season. So I'm nervous about that. Jabari Taylor, the senior leader on the defensive end, is going to be probably a game day decision, and we'll see. As far as stopping the run, that's certainly something that this team has struggled with. Alabama was a glaring point, but this team's also only lost 3 games in 3 years, and those teams were SEC teams. So there's something to be said for that.
Tell us about Ivan Pace Jr., the linebacker.
Dog. He is an undersized linebacker, but he is a wrecking ball. His brother Deshaun has played here. This is his 3rd season, I believe. They went to school together, obviously. Ivan was smaller, ended up going to Miami, Ohio for a couple of years, and was the MAC defensive player of the year for the MAC, and has not lost a beat. As people expected, there would be a drop as he went from MAC competition to AAC competition. That's simply not been the case. He is everywhere, and he is going to continue to be everywhere. And honestly, he will more than likely be a nightmare for both you this week and any other team that we play the rest of the season.
Let's talk a little more about your running game. Charles McClellan has come in. Obviously, Jerome Ford leaves last year. McClellan seems like he's just as much of a problem as Ford was last year. What kind of running back is he?
Charles McClelland is he's definitely a leader on this team. I believe this is his 4th season now with Cincinnati. He's actually given both his knees to the university, as he's had to have both of them replaced in his time at Cincinnati, and it's been a long road back for him to get to where he was an explosive runner again. But here he is, and I like to refer to him as not Chuck McClelland, short for Charles, but Chunk McClelland, because he has gotten tons of chunk plays this season, and I can't believe I didn't think he was going to be. I even said it on a multitude of our shows. I didn't think he was going to be a bell cow type back. I didn't think he was going to be the guy. I thought he was more of a change of pace back, and he has proven me wrong. I've had to go back and apologize on our show because I was wrong. I was wrong.
I think a lot of our fans' interactions with Cincinnati fans have been on Twitter, and we know how Twitter is. You can't really vouch for fans that way. But the average Cincinnati fan, do they consider UCF to be a rival right now?
Funny you mentioned that, because Coach Luke Fickell did mention in his presser on Tuesday that UCF is definitely looking to be a growing rivalry. And it goes back to Coach Luke Fickell probably has a little bit of a bitter taste in his mouth for a game at the beginning of his tenure with Cincinnati that was called due to rain. And he didn't like that the game did not actually finish. And ever since then, I'm pretty sure he's probably circled this game every single year in a big red Sharpie on the calendar. And it's continued to provide plenty of entertainment, be you a UCF fan or a Cincinnati fan. And I think that that's especially going to continue for years to come as both these teams graduate to the Big 12 together.
Do you think they were going to come back in that game? Is that why you couldn't have that?
I mean, you ask a coach, you ask a head coach if he thinks he can come back. He's not going to. No, we would have seeded. Like, no, that's not ever going to happen. Come on, man.
On that note, do you fans consider West Virginia your chief rival in this new look Big 12?
It's hard to say. With Bob Huggins being there on the basketball side, there's definitely a connection there, and they used to be a rival back in the days of the Big East, Conference USA. But that said, I mean, I don't know that the rivalry is still going to be there. I don't know that all the fan bases are going to care the same way that both Cincinnati and UCF fans are certainly going to care. That's not going to change. So I don't know. I guess wait and see.
Gotcha. Let's wrap up with this. We've talked about offense, defense. What about special teams? Where the Bearcats been this season in special teams?
Special teams has been a rocky road a little bit for the kicker that we brought in from Delaware, Ryan Coe. Although last week, he was 5 of 6, setting the school record for most field goals in a game. And that may have even been his personal best. I'm not sure how he did at Delaware. So he's definitely on the he's trending up. The punter, on the other hand, had a conference record last week with an 84-yard punt. He does have the Aussie style punt in his arsenal. And he's only a sophomore, but he is from Australia, as has this now the second punter in a row we've had from Australia. But yeah, I know that he definitely prides himself on trying to get it 4.5 seconds in the air, 45 yards, and no return. I think that teams are averaging 1 return yard on the season against him. So he's been pretty consistent.
Was that a wind-driven punt? Did it get a good bounce? 84. Jeez.
There were 30-mile-an-hour sustaining winds down in Dallas this weekend. So it was definitely wind-driven, but it also went out of the end zone. I think he kicked where he was actually kicking was from his own 7, and it went like that wasn't where the ball was snapped, but where he actually kicked from the 7, and it went past the uprights.
Not bad. Let's end with this. Tell us more about Bearcat Journal, because no doubt UCF fans we're going to be seeing a lot of Cincinnati in the years ahead.
Yeah, Bearcat Journal. We are hosted by 24/7 Sports, so you can find us at www.bearcatjournal.com. Chad Brendel. People are very familiar from UCF with him. He likes to go at the fans.
He likes to stir things up.
He does. He's not one to shy away from fan interaction. good or bad. But he owns the site, and he and I host a multitude of podcasts. We have a Sunday morning podcast to kind of recap the game from the day prior. There's a Monday evening podcast where we have a former walk-on who joins us. We have a Tuesday evening podcast where we cover Cincinnati sports. We have a Wednesday evening podcast where we preview the upcoming weekend game. We have a Thursday night podcast hosted by two former players and a third host. We have a nightly 20-minute podcast where we cover anything Bearcats. You can check all that out on Bearcat Journal on YouTube, though.
So what you're trying to say here is that Adam, Mike, and I aren't doing enough.
We're
That's what it sounds like.
We're just busy. I mean, content is king, right? I mean,
Wow.
we all know. So,
All right, Aaron Smith, we thank you for your comments on Cincinnati. I'd say good luck, but I wouldn't mean it.
I know I say the same thing to anybody I'm going against in fantasy football the same week. So I will be down, though. My flight leaves at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, so I'll be there in the press box.
I'll look you up. Be
I'll see
safe.
ya. Yep.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.
Jeez, guys. I'm not doing enough. Holy moly. Quite a few shows.
He's doing the Lord's work. That's a lot of podcasts.
Yeah, this is their full-time jobs. Do we just need to quit our jobs? Is that the key? All right, predictions on this one. Got a little bit on UCF, we know, and Cincinnati. Adam, what do you got?
Trace, I got 31-30 Knights.
Somebody. 31-30.
Whoo!
Let's see. What's the cow of the week think?
31-0 Knights. How's that? That's better than 31-30.
What is this going to be like? The prices, right? You go one under, one over. You're not calling for a shutout.
Shut them out. Why not? It's homecoming.
So we're not being serious in these predictions. Is what we're saying. I'm going to go
25-0. What do you want?
I'm going to go 29-23 UCF with a win, but not a lot of confidence in that one. Before we open that mailbag, a couple news and notes. Mike, by the way, when you lose to ECU, the bowl games, you get lesser bowl games. Still, Yahoo's got UCF North Carolina at Fenway. ESPN's got us against Texas Tech in the Armed Forces Bowl, or Pittsburgh in the military. I still don't think UCF leaves the state of Florida, so CBS Sports got them against Coastal Carolina in Boca. And Action Network saying BYU in the Cure Bowl. That I don't think is ever going to happen. Go around the kingdom.
The Cure Bowl is going to happen, or BYU in the Cure Bowl?
Neither of those.
It's very possible we lose two more games.
You got to be like 6-6, I think, to be in that Cure Bowl slot. By the way, UCF not bowl eligible. 5-2, 7 games in, not bowl eligible. All right, go around the kingdom. Women's soccer in the waning moments here with a 2-0 lead on the Cows over in Tampa. Donna Martin goal at the 16-minute mark. Katie Bradley at the 65-minute mark. The women won the AAC regular season championship on Sunday. And congratulations to them for that. They will await where all of that shakes out over the weekend in terms of seeding for the conference tournament. Knights 8-2-4, 6-0-1, about to pick up 3 points in the war on I-4. UCF already leads that 3-0 thanks to volleyball. Kristen Scott, your AAC Offensive Player of the Week, second consecutive Defensive Player of the Week, Olivia Lewis. Volleyball, I mentioned, they are ranked 25th. They swept Cincinnati, 17-1 overall, 9-1 the AAC. Claudia Dillon, the AAC Offensive Player of the Week. Friday, they are at Tulsa. Sunday, they are at Wichita. Men's soccer, shocker there. They beat number 13 Charlotte 2-1. They moved to 6-5, 3-4 in the AAC. One team in, one team out. Everybody else bunched up in the American Conference standings. Gino Vivi, your Offensive Player of the Week with a goal and assist versus Charlotte. Friday, they are at Tulsa. Volleyball's at Tulsa. Men's soccer at Tulsa. You heard Brandon. I don't think anybody wants to go back to Tulsa for anything. And then Knights end the regular season. War on I-4 with the Cows on Wednesday. And then men's and women's basketball media days, kind of unusual in that a late-minute scratch from head coach Johnny Dawkins. He expects to have a media availability before the November 7th opener. Thanks to Adam for posting those one-on-ones with various players. Adam, as you've been listening to those interviews, it's interesting how player after player talks about the team chemistry. I sense a lot of me guys last year, and not a lot of team guys.
Yeah, it does feel like they're enjoying the energy. I think Michael Durr said he's surprised how quickly this group of guys has come together, even though they're kind of all from new places and new faces. So maybe there's a chemistry item here that kind of bonds this team together. I do this every year, though, Trace. I get excited. I'm like, maybe we got a team. Brandon Suggs is pretty good. Michael Durr's a big guy. I'm in love with Taylor Hendricks. This could be our year. And then
I love Taylor Hendricks.
Yeah,
that kid is great.
Yeah.
Taylor Hendricks. I mean, what a great kid. A couple of transfers, but hey, this is the time to be optimistic, and then the season will get underway. All right, let's open that mailbag. Any walk and talks this week?
Negative, friend.
No walk and talks. We get a question about walk and talks coming up. How about a little music? Got a little music in there?
I'm efforting.
At CaptVeege1, is it the best course of action to avoid message boards after a loss like the ECU game? Or do you go ahead and rip the Band-Aid off, deal with the negativity now rather than wait? I will say that I don't delve into the message board. I will respond to people on Twitter, but the meltdowns in the message boards, in particular in the dungeon at UCFsports.com, it's just too much for me after watching the game itself. What about you?
I read. I usually don't post. So there's that. And you know what? I lied completely. Brian Peterson did absolutely send me a walk and talk that I did not use. He's absolutely right.
Well, it's because he's not on the text chain.
Suns Plus. Go check that out.
Really, hasn't he earned a Suns Plus membership? We need to enlist Brian to help us. Is it because we don't have a lot of time in this show that we couldn't run Brian's 3-minute?
Here's the thing. With all due respect to Brian, I love you to death, Brian. He sent it on like Sunday, and I like filed it away. Like, okay, I'll get to that later in the week, and then the later in the week came, and then here we are. And maybe I'm bullying Brian. I apologize.
Don't do that. When you say something like that, it tends to haunt you for a while. Is my experience.
Say something like what?
Whenever you bully.
Trace is bullying me.
That was not a call for that. It was. I did call for music, but there was no call for no music. Mike, what about you? Into the message boards, you just avoid everything.
Yeah, I stay away from the game threads all the time. I don't even look at them anymore. I stay away from Twitter. I stay away from everything, especially after a loss. I just want to get my mind off of it. So I haven't looked at any of that stuff.
And to review, where are you at in the stages of grieving over this loss?
Stage 2, stuck on stage 2, anger.
You're rolling right into that Cincinnati game, I see. How about this one for you, Mike? At the night UCF, did we peak? Have we peaked?
I sure hope not. If we peaked, this is going to be a tough next couple of months. We haven't had the last couple of years. We've kind of been out of the AAC race going into November. I say this about the Giants the last 5-10 years. I want meaningful football games in November. Let's go get the win this week and let's have fun the last few weeks here.
That's right. At Corey SQ_PhD, is it fair to blame one player for a loss? I don't know. Who might that one player be, Corey?
I think it could happen. I don't think in this game you can blame one guy because there was just a lot of things that didn't transpire. In some cases, probably. I don't think this is one of them, though.
Do things change in this game? We talked about tempo for ECU, energy for UCF. If Jalen Griffin holds onto that ball early on.
I mean, I hate to blame it on one guy. and
How about me singling him out?
Especially that was early in the game. There was 56 minutes of football left to be played. But, man, that whole game has a different vibe if we score off that play.
Yeah, it changes things a little bit, but it's not going to stop the defense or help the defense make any stops, but they couldn't do all game long. So it might have made things interesting early. Instead of 34-13, it would have been 34-20.
Got a couple of Thomas Castellanos questions. Our buddy Greg at Greg730. Is the rest of this season worth losing an entire year of Tommy at QB1 in the Big 12, meaning bring him in for a game? You heard Brandon say that he would think that it would be Mikey Keene. I guess that's what everybody thinks if it needs to come to that. At 2 letters, 2 words. Robert, if UCF were to lose the possibility of winning a conference championship, what are the odds JRP gets benched in favor of Tommy so he gets some serious playing time? I think that is an interesting thread of topic that's come up in message boards and on social media this week. UCF loses this one, likely no chance at that conference championship. You just pull the plug on the JRP experiment and go all in on Tommy.
I don't think Gus does, right? Because the experiment is helmed by Professor Gus, right? So I think he's going to want to see his experiment through into the end. And let's say we went out in games and we're still a 10-2 team. He can still look back and say, hey, we won 10 games with a guy who hadn't played football and played quarterback in 2 years, right? He still has that over him. So I don't think Gus makes that call. I do think it's interesting though, if JRP had to go out for some reason, Tommy fits the offense better in terms of what Gus likes to do. I know he's already got the 4 games. I know Mikey's a seasoned veteran. I just wonder if Gus wouldn't say, hey, I don't have to make that many changes if I go to Tommy. But I don't think he does that willingly unless there's something that happens to JRP. And again, I hope that doesn't happen.
I don't think he does it unless we're officially eliminated. So if we lose this game, I think there may be a team in the championship game with 2 losses, depending on what happens with Houston. But if we lose this game and we lose to Tulane, then yeah, I think it's done. You start Tommy against Navy, you start him against the Cows, and you start him in the bowl game. You get 3 starts there to get him ready for next year.
Did we see a true freshman play against Navy last year? You want to see it again?
Yeah, I mean, by that time we're done. So yeah, I do.
Got 2 questions. This first one, and then we'll end with one from @Dolly_drama. Is Gus's lack of media availability for his coaching staff and players hurting potential NIL earning opportunities? I think what he's referencing here is that Gus makes his offensive coordinator, Chip Lindsey, defensive coordinator, Travis Williams, available the day after the game. And so when it's a Saturday game, it's a Sunday night at 7 o'clock media availability. And as you know, UCF lost at ECU, and then that media availability was canceled. Don't know why. You draw your own conclusions on that. Not available. What do you think? Does it hurt, NIL opportunities at all?
Well, notice Gus has stopped wearing the cute shirts at the press conferences, right? I haven't seen any Isaiah Bowser fathead shirts in a while, so I don't know what to read into that. Look, I don't think this is any different than any other college program. A lot of programs want to have control over what their athletes do. I would say, though, if UCF wants to position itself as the future of college football, a place where you can come and make your brand and have your name out there and sort of be a forefront of the NIL movement, limiting access certainly goes counter to that. So you'd think that they would do something if they really want to position themselves in that space.
I think he's just trying to protect his guys coming off this loss. Who knows what kind of questions we're going to get thrown at these kids. You don't want them to get caught in a bad spot, say something they shouldn't say. So I think in this case, he held them back a little bit. If we come out and beat Cincinnati, you probably see all those kids up there next week.
At SMR, a lot of tape out there on play calling and trends. ECU jumped some routes. Seemed like they knew what was coming at times. How are we going to mix it up to keep Cincinnati guessing? I'll tell you what, they got a tough defense. JRP and crew have their work cut out for them.
Yeah, this D line is pretty good, and obviously we heard from Aaron. Ivan Pace at the linebacker spot is pretty good as well. It's interesting to hear Aaron tell us that they struggle with kind of dual threat quarterbacks. I didn't know that John Rice was a dual threat per se, but if there are windows to be had, I mean, hopefully we can find those. That's the thing, though. Show of hands out there in the audience. How many of you are confident Gus can scheme up against a defense and find those wrinkles? I don't know.
Have you ever noticed, by the way, this goes back to Heupel in particular, the opposing coach will say, or the UCF coach will say, they threw something at us that we weren't expecting. I haven't heard Luke Fickell say that. Right? Didn't say, I never saw
he's still
that
mad
before.
about 2017 in a game that he called off, so I'm not sure if Luke Fickell is the guy that we want to.
He finds motivation in unique ways. At Steve, 847555071, who decides offensive personnel from play to play, thinking wide receivers and running backs? Just wondering if it's Gus or the position coach. Everything is Gus, right? Play caller.
I mean,
with help, obviously, from assistant coaches.
Before each drive, maybe he has input. Hey, this is a Bowser drive. This is a Johnny drive. Whatever it is, I don't know if he's telling on each play who's coming in and out. He's got to delegate some responsibility to these coaches, I would think.
Adam at Patrick Nurse FTW. Will UCF's offense this week be pass heavy, run heavy, balanced? Gus says balanced is what he's looking for.
I mean, I think we have to use the run to set up the pass the way our offense is structured, right? Let them kind of crowd the box and hope we can find a seam a la SMU. So I would think we'd be run heavy early and see if we can get them off schedule and then try to pop one over the top. That would be my guess, because I think Gus always wants to run the football.
I think you got to be balanced. If they're going to come up and try to stop the run like everybody else has done to us, you got to be able to throw the ball early. The key to the game is get up on these guys early. We cannot play from behind. And I don't know how well they could play from behind either. So we build up a lead, get the crowd into it. I think we can be okay.
At Free Sport Travel, coach blaming himself, Coach Malzahn, for the team's energy and all of that. How can a guy who's been coaching this long not have figured out how to get his team ready for a big road game? I think it becomes a question that hangs over things. Obviously, the focus is Cincinnati, but then Memphis and Tulane, and they're 1-5 that only win on the road to Tulane. It does make you wonder why they don't have the team better prepared for road games, right?
It was a shocking admission, but again, I gotta believe there's some sort of hidden message in that somewhere. There's something he's trying to deliver to his team through the media, because I can't imagine a coach would come out and say I didn't have my team energized. So I gotta hope there's a hidden message there.
Mike, at Lonely Bee, UCF did allowing the worst real quarterback in the AAC to go 30 for 36 in Holt Nailers. Buy us another year of T-Will. I don't think that matters. T-Will's a hot coaching commodity.
No, I don't think it buys us another year. If he finishes this year strong. Now, if we go in the toilet for the next 5 weeks, we may be stuck with T-Will for another 3 years. Who knows?
Stuck. At Spursy night, each of you, what is the biggest adjustment needs to be made for Saturday's game? I will say this. They've got to perform on the offensive line. And, when Sam Jackson says during Monday's availability, they're still working on things from a communication standpoint. They're going to face some guys, this Ivan Pace that's coming after them.
No turnovers. Get off the field on 3rd down.
I was distracted. My daughters both came in here. They're asking me a question. I had them write it down. I don't know what's going on over here. So next question.
at Black Gold, what did they ask you? What'd they ask you?
I don't know. She's writing it down right now.
Okay, well, be sure to share that. Is that a Sun's mailbag question, or is that just directed to you?
I'm sure it has nothing to do with the show.
Okay. Well, I'm sure they watch. At Black Gold _ad, Cincinnati has 2 All-Americans on D. What is a Corleone? How do we stop the sack father? I don't know. Do you?
A 6th offensive lineman. This is probably what we need at this point.
Throw in the German.
We got Mike here. Mike got an important update.
What do we got?
She likes to sleep with the TV on. She said not to turn it off because she has an alarm set. So that's the update. Okay. How do we counteract the sack father? There's screens. Is maybe the best way to do that. If you throw some screen passes, if they're getting a lot of pressure, maybe you can burn them that way.
All right, we end with this. Go back to Dolly _drama, asking if expletives are allowed for a possible walk and talk that he would like. Is that a Suns Plus thing, or where were we at on this? Do we have a maturity rating when these gets released as audio? Is this a family-friendly show?
Suns and maturity usually don't belong in the same sentence. I say come as you are, Dolly. You know what I mean? Like Brian Peterson probably owes me a couple F-bombs after missing his walk and talk.
What was his question about? Do you remember?
That's a great question. I don't know.
Was it something about extended warranties? I'm just asking. I
actually don't know. He may have said it in the email. Hold on. Let me. This is riveting.
I will tell you that UCF women's soccer has just beaten the Cows 2-0. So the 22nd ranked Knights, fresh off of winning the American Athletic Conference Championship, get 2 goals. They beat the Cows. They extend their lead to 6-0 in the war on I-4 rivalry. What do we got?
The audio. Hold on.
Whoop, how did that get on the ground?
Jesus, Brad.
Hey, Suns, Wild Bill, Brian W. Peterson here.
How long is this thing?
All right. Can we save this for next week? We got.
He's still walking. Hold on.
All right. Brian. We love you. Look us up. Look up Adam and I. Mike will be JP Gilbury at home. I want to thank Brandon Hellwig, UCFsports.com, Bearcat Journal.
That wasn't a question. He was just giving us his thoughts.
Oh, okay. That sounds like good podcast fodder. Be sure and catch Happy Mike in the recap of the win over Cincinnati. Happy homecoming, everybody. Big spirit splash. If you can't make it down to watch the students dive into the reflection pond, be sure to watch it online. No doubt that will be streamed. For Adam and Mike, I am Trey Strelko. Happy homecoming, everybody. Go Knights!
Charge on.